Welcome everybody. So now we are trying to go a little bit more specific for the PE domain, and then we collect here the experience of Toma as someone that got his ERC starting grad funded, and my experience as a referee of starting grants. So we try to collect different, our experiences, our point of view, and hope this will be useful for everybody. And then we'll just start, like this. And then, present slide 2. So the first things, I have just one slide before handing over to Toma, and it's the following: read the guidelines. So we also noticed in the main session that a lot of questions could actually be answered simply by reading the guidelines. And so on the ERC website, you can find a lot of very useful information. You get all the information for the applicants, you get the guides, also the guides of the reviewers. Is totally open, so you can read there what are the criteria, how you will be evaluated. And also you will find all the details for the panel, all the panel members, so you can go through it and you can see, for instance, how to best choose your panel. For instance, you can look at the name of the people that were previously panel members and see if these names ring a bell to you, then you know you're in the right field. If you don't know anyone, then means maybe this is not exactly your panel. And overall, before all this, I would say you have to start thinking about your main idea like a year in advance. So it's never too early to start. You have to really shape your idea well in advance, and then you can take all this documentation and see how you will fit. So with this, now I will end it immediately to Toma, and then we will go further in this little adventure. So we have a very short presentation, and then all the rest of the time is for you to ask questions, and we'll try to help you as much as we can. Toma, it's for you.
Good. Thank you, Zeila. Yeah. So I applied for the ERC starting grant in the 2017 call. So some of my experience may have changed. For example, I went to an actual in-person interview, which probably won't be the case due to the COVID pandemic. But anyways, I'll present what my experience was back then. And there's a few essential points that I want to emphasize in the beginning. Please take advantage of any training events. The ERC itself organizes these around Europe and in other countries. There might be national funders that give training events, and your university might also give some events. So please take advantage of all of those. And when you're preparing your proposal, try to be early and leave plenty of time for colleagues, potentially also from other fields or other subfields at least, to give you feedback. Because the panels are quite interdisciplinary, and if you're using a lot of jargon that's very subfield specific, it won't be understandable for the panel or most of the panel. So it's quite useful to get feedback from other people. Having very clear language in your proposal, having a clean, nice layout and graphic design if you can manage, so that figures are clear, easily viewable. There's not too much stuff or too little stuff. When you're applying for a competitive grant like that, and your panelists and peer reviewers are having to read many proposals, if they have to work hard to understand what you're saying, it's probably not going to help you. But the core of the proposal is, what is your idea? What is your proposal? So there should be some core idea that you build the proposal all around, some sort of a frontiers idea that you want to bring our joint knowledge forward. And then when you have your idea, you have to convince the panelists that this is an exciting idea, scientifically speaking, research speaking. So it has to be something that you can justify. Why should the EU spend 1.5 million euros for this idea? So it really has to be an exciting and good idea. It also has to be timely. So in the sense that if it looks like this should have been done 5 years ago, you're probably not going to be successful with that grant, especially if there is already literature that kind of addresses that point. but it also has to be timed in the other sense. So if it looks like your grant cannot be done until, let's say, some technology is developed that is available in 5 to 10 years time, again, it's not something that they can fund at the moment. So it needs to be fitting that you need to justify that this time is the right time for this grant. And then it's very important to also justify why you are the right person to pursue this proposal. And of course, if it's your idea, that's one really good reason why you're the right person to do it. But you also have to show that your background is appropriate for the grant and for the type of research, type of in the case of PE, usually some sort of natural sciences. You have to have the right skill set and the right knowledge to be able to lead this project. And then finally, important point, there needs to be a relatively high risk-reward ratio. So the ERC doesn't fund a lot of very incremental research, a lot of very research that isn't somehow risky. So that is a balance. So you have to have at least, let's say, roughly half of your grant has to be kind of believable. Okay, based on this plan, it looks very plausible that you can achieve these goals. And then you may have some things that are a lot riskier, that, okay, maybe we don't know yet whether these other goals will be possible, but if we build upon them in the start of the project, it may become possible. And then the reward part is, so some of the riskier ideas can be very rewarding, can be real breakthroughs in science. And when you make that balance correctly, your proposal looks like it's feasible, but it also looks like if it succeeds, there is risk, you get great rewards. And this is something that ERC wants to fund. And one kind of practical note on the infrastructure. So if you are working in an institution where you don't necessarily have very good infrastructures, let's say you're working in one of the new associated countries and maybe the research infrastructures aren't quite as strong in that country, well, you can partly ask for money for equipment in the grant, as was mentioned in the plenary, but you could also cover these needs by collaboration, either nationally or internationally. So you don't have to do everything in your home institution. If you need access to a European synchrotron, for example, you can easily write this into your proposal. And there's even possibility to get funds for infrastructure access as needed. So that's something to keep in mind, that the ERC does need to see that you are capable of carrying this project out, but it doesn't all have to be in-house. Collaborations are just fine. Here's a timeline that my proposal roughly went through. So about a year in advance, I already started planning in the sense of like, what's the general topic? What are the main questions I want to address? Looking at the deadlines for the applications, thinking a bit, okay, if the deadline is, yes, let's say in this case, March, okay, I need to start writing in a certain amount of time. So, you know, 1 year is roughly the timescale you should be thinking about. This is a major proposal and a major grant, and you have to be well prepared for that. And I'd say around 4 months in advance, you need to start writing your proposal, depending on how fast you are as a writer. I managed to write the entire proposal in about 2 months of 50% effort. But if you are a less fast writer, then you probably might need more time. So just know yourself, know your writing skills, and leave enough time for that. And then I'd say at least 2 months out, you need to have a first draft ready that you can actually share with your colleagues, with your mentors, whoever you can get to give you good feedback on that. That needs time. You can't be sending your proposal to your colleagues like 1 week before the deadline and expect that you'll get good feedback and actually are able to take that into account. So, you know, not just out of respect for your colleagues' time, but respect out for yourself, you need to have plenty of time for the feedback stage. I had a vacation after 2-week vacation after I sent out my draft to my colleagues. That was very nice, but obviously not mandatory. But then about 1 month in advance, you should already log into the online submission system, create your proposal draft, and maybe, start filling in all the form details that you can do far out. And I'd say 1 week out, you should have a draft that incorporates all the feedback that you can even upload already. And then, you know, if you did nothing more after that, you would still be kind of fine with this. But then, of course, the last week, you can submit any sort of final fixes, corrections, improvements that you came up with. So that's about the timeline. And then from your submission of your grant, it will take about a year before your project can start if you get approved. So you have to plan also your career, like where am I going to be based, how will I be will I be covering my salary, and so on. So it is about a year is the fastest that you can make it. Regarding the abstract, so this is an abstract that for my actual grant, the abstracts themselves are public. The color coding is kind of taking inspiration from nature, has kind of an abstract template. How should you write the introductory paragraph for an article? For a proposal, it's a bit different, so I've adapted here. So there should be some basic introduction, which is basically understandable for anybody who knows anything about science, basically, or in our case, physics or natural sciences. It should be very, very broad. Don't start with anything that's specific to your proposal. Make a very wide funnel that you then bring into the specifics. And then you can have a few sentences of the detailed background, kind of giving what is the actual problem, question, breakthrough that the proposal is addressing. And then there should be probably something that kind of, really nails that down. What is the key enabling finding? So in my case, I had a finding that I built this proposal on, and that I mentioned in this orange sentence. Or it could be a key problem in the field that you say that your proposal will address. And then you should, in a few sentences, summarize the kind of big picture. What is my project going to do to address this problem? Then what are the key outcomes, kind of some sort of practical things that come out of it, not just, everything will be better forever. You have to be a bit more specific. What are the key goals of the project? And then in the end, you can broaden it back out. So what will this project, if I succeed to do this, how will this change science or improve society, or whatever is your motivation for addressing this problem? And again, that can be quite broad and kind of, more inspirational to say. For the interview, as soon as you got invited, slowly start preparing. Carefully read all the instructions. They should arrive at least a month in advance of your panel, maybe even longer. The instructions for each panel vary a lot, so I had 10-minute presentation in mine, and I could make slides, and the same slides could be printed out as handouts. In some other panels, there's 2 minutes presentation without any slides, no handouts. So read the instructions for your own panel. If you do use slides, make them simpler than you would like. So make them really, really simple. Make them targeted at the rest of the panel who is not in your subfield. Right, and then, the trainings I mentioned, and what you can also do, even if you don't have official trainings, try to create a mock panel. So just invite everybody to a virtual meeting and have the timing, have your presentation, and have people really try to ask you difficult questions about your proposal. And practice as much as you need to, but not more. So it's not good if it feels like you're reading your speech out of a paper. You have to give the impression that you know your stuff, you're confident about your proposal. So practice to that level, but not like that it's a kind of a robotic recital of a script. So again, it depends really on you as a presenter, how much practice is the right amount for you personally. In the in-person interview, being well ahead of time was good. You needed your passport to identify yourself, and I would suggest using a PDF rather than a PowerPoint to avoid any problems with the presentation format. And in my case, I got shuffled to a much earlier slot because somebody else had cancelled, so be prepared to also change the order. And finally, about the questions, there may be some technical questions that are very critical. They sound like, oh, this person is hating my idea. But actually, it may be a panelist who is trying to help you, who is trying to give you a chance to address something that the external peer reviewers said. So take those, don't take those personally, and really try to use the opportunity to address those misunderstandings or weak points in the proposal. And then there are certain questions that quite often get asked, like who do you see as your competitors? Why did you publish some results in a modest journal is something that came up for me, like why wasn't this a bigger deal at the time? And you might want to have an answer ready for that. And yeah, where do you see your research 5 years from now? So we give you this funding, you do your project for 5 years. So what's the outcome? Where will you be personal, and where will the field be as a result of this proposal? And for the starting grant also, what can be like, we don't have many last author papers at the career stage when we are applying, maybe even none. Corresponding authorships can be very valuable in that sense. So, and you should have an answer ready. Don't take it personally. They're just trying to address perhaps weaknesses that were pointed out by the referees. And if you have a good answer, you can really help your situation then. Okay, that's it from my side. I'll hand it to Zeila about the evaluation.
Thanks, Toma. So we go on from here. And so let's try to switch perspective. And this also I will suggest when you write and you read what you write, try to read it as you were the referee, as you were a panel member, as you were like not a specialist, but a panel member that is, I don't know, if you are doing theory, imagine it's an experimentalist reading your work or vice versa. So keep this in mind and be yourself the first referee for your own work. And there is only one criteria in basically in the ERC application, which is excellence. It is excellence of the research project and of the principal investigator, and the two that they have to match. Also, as Toma mentioned, it has to be why you are the right person for this great idea. So the basic line now is, how can I demonstrate the excellence of the project and of me as the right person to deal with this project? Again, all the information, there are a lot of very fundamental information, as I mentioned at the beginning, on the web of the ERC. So read well the information for applicant, because there they tell you what do they want. So you take this and then you do a little bit of let's say reflection on yourself and on your work and on your project and see, how do I meet these requirements? So for instance, this is taken exactly from the ERC advice for the guide of applicants. They tell you what they want. They want that your project, it has to be groundbreaking and high impact. They want that your project will address very important fundamental challenges. It has to be very ambitious. It has to go beyond the state of the art. Then you take your idea and, okay, of course you like it because it's your idea, but you have to be, let's say, critical with it and see, is it really beyond the state of the art, or I'm just, keep doing the same thing that I was doing as a postdoc, as a PhD student, as a master? And if the answer is yes, then this is not a good idea for the ERC grant. It can be a good idea for other things, but it should not be incremental. So you really have to come out with something new, which is based on something. Of course, it's based on your experience and what you did before, but it cannot be just yet another thing along the same line. So this you have to make, I don't know, write it in big letters on your bed and look at it every night, but it should be really the baseline of what a project idea is. And then you have this big question that you want to answer. This is the problem that you want to try to answer. And then the next thing is, okay, how can I do it? And then it comes also a bit of the technical part, the method and how you implement it. And also practical things like how many people I need in my team, which kind of instrument, or do I need to access to some specific resources? Or if you are doing computational work, which kind of a computer do I need? How can I get access to it? So you show that you thought about it. I mean, again, there is no like a real good or bad answer, but it's important in the way you describe your project that you show that you had a thought about it. You do have a plan. And if you get the money, you know what you do with that. It's not just that you get the money. Okay, now what should I do? I don't remember well. So this, it means that it has to be feasible and appropriate and so on. Also, it might be that you have to develop something new. It's not, let's say, compulsory, but if needed to reach your idea, then you say it, look, the state of the art reached this point, now we need this little gap, and I will fill this little gap, you know, to address my goal. Also, it's very important to be realistic with the time scale. Because if you promise to do something which is very ambitious in a super short time scale, I mean, the people that read your project, they know, they will feel, they will realize immediately that, come on, you are exaggerating, it's not possible. So you have to be honest. So you cannot promise that you go to the moon if you have just a bike. So you really have to have things which are appropriate and well connected. You really need to have a story. I have this problem, I want to solve it, and I use this method, and then I will have this outcome. All this should go in one story, and really you have to be the first one to be the critical person on this. Next, it's the principal investigator. Again, this in red here is taken from the guidelines of the ERC. So the criteria are: you have to demonstrate that you are able to conduct groundbreaking research, that you have creative independent thinking, and you have the expertise and the capacity for doing it. So how do you show that? And this it can be especially difficult in an early stage of the career, because let's say maybe you don't have other project of which that you already conduct. If you do have, it's a very good point, and you also have in the CV like funding ID, so you can say, I already been the principal investigator of this and that project. But sometimes people don't have that. But then my suggestion is think twice. Because sometimes when you think twice, you will find out that actually you did some leadership in something. That can be very simple, like organizing, I don't know, the seminars in the institute where you are going, where you are working at the moment, to something a bit more advanced. So any little bit that can help to show that you do have your ideas, which are not just the idea of your former supervisor, that you have a vision, that you have a path in your research line from the start to the moment. And this next big idea is really something that will bring you to the next level. These are the things that you have to say. And so overall, in practice, the way is the following. You have to focus, this is again my opinion, on the quality, not on the quantity. So as a referee, I'm not impressed if somebody say, I published, I don't know, 100 papers, because I go and I check the papers and I see, look, this is the title, and then it just changed. Instead of doing on element A, then it did the same things on element B and then C. And then, come on, this is just one work. And so instead of being 10 papers, to me, it became one paper. So avoid having like series of papers, or cut your research just to have a big number of papers. Now the referees, I can say, they don't care about this. They really care if you did one good piece of work, and it is your work. And this, for instance, when you write your CV, you can write when you say, okay, this is a relevant publication, and you can say why. You can say what was your role. Even if you are not the last author, you can say, look, I was, I don't know, the one that trained the PhD student that is the first author. And of course, I'm not the last, you know, because there is the head of the lab, so you could not be. But you don't have to mention that. You mention, I trained the student. Of course, if it's true, you can. So you have to be also honest. But you have to say what you did. You have to say, I don't know, theoretical experimental collaboration. I'm the main author of the experimental part, or I'm the main author of the theoretical part. And then people understand when there are, you know, many people in a publication, what is your contribution? So you have to tell them. So again, now you can also focus on other research output, and this I will also recommend, not just the publication, but for instance, if you wrote a piece of code which is open source, this is a research output, so just say that. So research output is not just publication. So, or if you made an equipment which is unique and no one else or very few people have in the world, just say, you know, I built this equipment by myself, and now this is, I don't know, leading in Europe for this kind of research. So you have to tell. Also, take in mind the people that read your application do not know you, so you have to tell them why, what is great, why you are the right person. So any achievement that you believe that is important, you have to present it. So it does not have to be inflating your value, but really do an honest look at what you do and say, where do I spend my time? What am I passionate about? What is important in my profile? And you present it. Also, you can write in your CV if you had any non-conventional career path. You switch field, for instance, or you had career break, or I don't know, you went to industry and then back to science, or you had to take care of some people that was ill, anything that could justify why for, I don't know, 1 year you did not have, I don't know, a big publication output, just write it. And also maternity leaves, just write it. Because again, people don't know. So you have a little space there in your CV to express yourself and tell the people. It's not a justification, but it's like, look, you know, in my life, I also had this. And you explain yourself very briefly, but to the point. And so the referee will know. So, yes, if you have, let's say, papers with a single author or very few authors, these are very good because it shows your work, it's much easier. But if the papers are with, I don't know, many, I don't know, collaborators, like in high energy, then it's very important to say, what did you do? Because if you see 100 people contributing, then your name is lost. So you have to say, what was your role? So all these are like hints to show yourself and show what is good about you among, you know, all the rest of the applicants. Again, how to show that you are independent. So in the starting grant, you have to say clearly who was your PhD supervisor. When you say PhD, the year, and you name the supervisor. So it's clear who is the person. And it's important to highlight the papers that you did without the supervisor, because this really shows that you had your own path. In case, this also Toma mentioned, if you are corresponding author, mention it. In some fields, this is very valued. If you co-supervise PhD students, even if you were not the official supervisor, you can mention. And people understand that in some countries or in some fields, you cannot be the official supervisor unless you are a professor. But if you have that experience, and if it's a true experience, you can say, I co-supervise this student, and for instance, we published this and that paper, so to back up with evidence your statement. If you organized anything, school, seminar, workshop, just say. If you got some previous grants, mention it. And this also encourage, maybe before starting applying for an ERC grant, apply for some other, I don't know, national research fundings or some other research fundings, I don't know, Marie Curie or anything else, because it will build your experience, and then you can show, look, I already got some money, I can do it. I already manage the project, I can do it. So also if you belong to some members, a wider network of scientific research, it's good to mention, because it means that, okay, you are independent, but you are not isolated. You are aware what is the field, you are in connection with your community. So you have to balance these things. Finally, what happens if I don't get a grant? Don't worry. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the career. I mean, ERC is good, But it's not the only way to make your way in the academia and to make a career path. So you can find a way to do your great science one way or another, maybe not with ERC fundings, with some other fundings. So there is nothing to despair. The best things about ERC is that you get referee reports, which are very detailed, and they will highlight your good points, your strong points, and your weakness. And so you can take this and really learn, use this advice that you get from the referees, from the panel, and so on, as a guide of things, for the things that you have to improve. And then you can try again. You can try the ERC, but you can also try for other grants, and it's a learning process. So don't take it personally, but take it as an opportunity to grow as a person and as a scientist. Also, in some countries, there are some compensating grants. So if you applied to an ERC, there is some money that you can get. I don't know if you classified A, but you did not get the money because for lack of funds. So there are some specific criteria. This is country dependent, so you should go and check locally what are the rules. And the other thing is, anyway, you have a 5-year work plan and you work hard to make this plan, so use it. Even if you don't have the ERC resources, you can still do the research. And again, you can try to apply to other things starting from that. And for what I would say, that writing a proposal, you have to see it as a good exercise to put your research in perspective. You will learn more about, what you are doing, the way, the technique, and the goal, and have a look towards, 5 years from now. Where is the science going? Where is my science going? And so in the end, you have to think out of the box and always consider for alternatives. And there are always alternatives, as Mr. Spock will tell us. So with this, I will conclude, and now we can open for questions, and we can take some time to answer your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Zeila. Very, very good. While you were talking, I was collecting some questions from the chat, so maybe I can help post these. So there was a person who asked, can you say something about the project structure? How many work packages, how many tasks per work package? And my impression is that there is really no clear structure for that. So your proposal has to be believable, it has to have a logical structure, it has to be plausible, but there is no, like, you could even do without work packages. I mean, I think it's a bit rarer, but there is no fixed requirement for these. Isn't that right, Zeila?
Yes, it's not a fixed requirement, but it has to be meaningful. So you put what you need, basically. So you don't have to put a work package just because somebody told you, you have to have 5 work packages.
Exactly.
You are not even obliged to have work packages. I mean, it's very free, the format.
Yeah, so this is quite different to other EU funding, where you have very strict rules about how the consortium looks and how the work package and work plan is. So the ERC is a lot more free for that. Then there was a question, in which part of the proposal do you elaborate on your leadership? Do you just throw hints here and there in your proposal, or is there a separate document like broader impact in NSF proposals?
You have it also maybe in the CV as well. You will. I mean, it's something you don't have to say, I am a leader. But people that read your work, they have to understand that you had leadership. So in the CV, you can show it. And when you have the state of the art, you can refer to your works, and people will see how you contributed to the field, for instance.
Right, so you don't just have to say you're a leader, you have to show that you've supervised some people, perhaps you've independently or had a very independent role in publications like corresponding authorship or first authorships, that you show that these ideas are yours, and so on and so on. And then in the small narrative part in your CV, you can kind of emphasize these. But yeah, it should be apparent from the proposal that these are your ideas and you are pushing this forward, and from your CV that this is believable. So it's not such a separate section like I guess in NSF. Right. Will collaborations involved in the proposal make any impact on the proposal? Do we need collaborations? I would say, like I was writing in the plenary, mentioning here before, collaborations are a great way if you don't have access to something that you need, but they're not a must. So if you have everything in your home institution that you need to make this project to be a success, I don't think it's a minus or a plus if you add collaborations. What's your impression?
Yeah, so it's a personal grant. So first of all, it has to be that you are able to do it with your own strength. Then if you have some collaboration, it's not bad, but it should not look that the success of the proposal depends on other people. Because then it can backfire, it can be against you, because it looks like, for instance, I need that some other research group do something, and this is a preliminary step for my work. Then if something happened to the other group, it's out of your control, and then your research cannot go forward. Also, this is not a synergy grant. So you cannot put, I collaborate with this, and that. That's not the right place to do this. So it's really mostly focused on what you can do with your resources. Of course, you will collaborate, but you should not depend on it.
Right. Then there was a question, what if you were unemployed for some time between grants and jobs? As we know, in some cases, this is unfortunately what happens.
It does not matter, I would say.
Yeah, but so, you have a career break in effect, and like, yeah, how do you address that in your proposal?
So yeah, write it in the CV, career break. But being unemployed, it depends. I don't know if it's some months, this is totally normal. If it's 1 year, maybe you want to justify. Even if you say that you decided, I want to have 1 year travel to India because I need the mindfulness. I don't know. Some people did this. I don't know, some people after the PhD they decided, okay, I need 1 year because I want to understand what is the meaning of the life. You write it. I mean, that's not a problem. So I had myself a career break. I had almost 1 year of unemployment, but in the meantime, I also had a child. And so this also, explained, look, I could go somewhere else in principle, but that was very far, and with a small kid, I could not do that. And so this entered in my maternity time. So you can explain. Again, you don't have to excuse yourself, but you just say, I mean, you don't have to hide it.
Yeah, if you have a hole in your publication record, for example, for this reason, it's very good to mention what the reason is.
Yeah.
Right, then there was a question, how about dealing with a profile where the scientist was only with famous people? So I guess somebody who's been going from one famous lab to another. I don't know if there's, anything you have to deal with that. Like, you have to show that your ideas are your own. Apart from that, whether you were in famous labs or not, I guess is less important.
Dealing with the profile. I don't understand if this is, so you want to show that you have your own ideas independently from the famous boss?
No, the question was literally, how about dealing with a profile where the scientist was only with famous people? So my interpretation is that you are having an applicant who has been going from one famous lab to another, and how do you deal with that?
So it will be, yeah, maybe a good thing is if the person has some personal grant first. So either national grants or European, something that shows that, okay, I went to the lab of this very famous person, but I went there, I don't know, with the Marie Curie, which is something mentioned by Samuel just next. And then, yes, you were in the very big lab with the very famous people, but you were there with your own grant. And that makes a difference.
Or the publications from that time, you clearly have a role, like a corresponding authorship or something.
Yeah, and also you can publish, I mean, you can, if you are there in the very famous lab people, you can tell to the super famous boss and say, look, for my career, I also need to publish alone or with other collaborators, and have very honest and open talk. And they can say, okay, look, I don't need to be in all your publications. So you can really ask them and say, I have to show that I have independence, otherwise I will never proceed in the career.
Yeah, sorry, Tomas, we missed one question earlier. So how do you answer this question? Why is not your old supervisor doing this project if the idea is so good? I think
because it's not me.
I think the answer to that is that because it's my idea.
Exactly, because it's not me.
You do need to show that your idea is your idea and not your old supervisor's idea. So yes, this is really important. You have to. It has to be apparent from the proposal that you're not just taking your supervisor's path and continuing. It has to be about what your ideas are, what your contribution is, and the easiest way to demonstrate that is in the publication record. Like if you have a corresponding authorship in those publications, or even a first authorship without corresponding, but somehow like demonstrate with your CV, with your publications, what is your contribution. And in the proposal you can write, I came up with this idea, I found this, you can use language to emphasize what your contribution is.
Yeah, I would say this is true in general, not just for the ERC, but if you work in a university and you want to get a position there, there is no chance that you get a position if you just do exactly the same things as your former very famous boss, because the university will say, look, we have this big guy doing it, why should I hire you? So you have to develop your own research line. And this, I think, is the planning that goes in, I don't know, years before. So you have to do your reflection. You really stop anything you do and you make a reflection. What is really the research line that I want to do? And then you go. And you will see it will be different. Because you are just a different person, you have different, I don't know, skills, you work in different labs, so it has to be different.
Yeah. Then a person was asking, is it a disadvantage if I joined academia late? I'm 43 years old and applying for a starting grant.
So here it counts the date from the PhD. And then advantage or disadvantage, it depends what you did before. So in principle, for the ERC, I don't think it's a problem, because they also legally, nobody can be excluded just by the age. But you have to, I don't know, it depends for the path. If you were in the industry, for instance, before, and then you did something there, so you have to say what you did, and then if it's relevant, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, and then you go and get a PhD, and then you're eligible for a starting grant. So yeah. There should not really be. I don't think there's a lot of ageism in the panels. No.
There can be, though, ageism maybe in to get a permanent job. Maybe this, yes, but that's a different problem.
But getting the grant will definitely help with
that. Yeah.
What is the impact of preliminary unpublished data? Is it a weak proposal if we do not have preliminary data? What I'd say from my case, I just managed to publish an archive preprint with my preliminary data, and that's always a great way. Just put a preprint on archive where you can actually cite your. So that you can have a proposal without any preliminary data, but it definitely helps. No matter how tentative, if it's just one example that shows that something is possible that didn't seem possible in the general knowledge, it definitely helps. But it can be just in the proposal, unpublished, it's no problem, or it can be a preprint. And yeah.
Yes. Also, it is if you read the guide of the applicant, this is also can be counted as a publication. So if you have a preprint, this you can count in. Also, just quickly answering about the connection with Marie Curie. It's nice if you have a Marie Curie because it's an example of a previous grants, but by no means this is sufficient to get the ERC. So it's not to discourage people. I mean, it's good to have it, but it's not automatic that if you get a Marie Curie, then the next step it will be the ERC. Because the Marie Curie is nice, but it's a personal grant. I think people that really have an advantage are people that have some like junior professorship, because there they can really show that they had a group with many people. And really, these people, they start with a very clear advantage. So, but this depends on the country in which we are working. So it happens, I don't know, in Germany, because we have junior professorship or eminöter, and there you can have a team and then you can show. Or in the Netherlands with the Veni, you can have your own team. But Marie Curie, it's just one personal grant, and so officially you don't have money for the group. If you manage other people, you can mention it, but you have to tell, because it's not automatic.
Then there is a question to you as a referee. So you covered part of this already, but maybe some highlights. So what do you like to see in a project? What are the key things that make your review a proposal favorably, and what are big no-nos?
Look, it has to be something that you read it and you say, oh, that's great. And sometimes it happens, and sometimes instead it's, come on, yet again this other proposal on the same things over and over again. So the problem is there are many people that just use the same idea over and over because this is the trendy topic. I don't know, graphing, everybody. I'm also working on graphing, but how many proposals? And then how can you be different? If you take a topic that everyone else is doing, how can you show that you are much better than anyone else? So it's better to really go a bit more original ideas than taking something which is with some buzzwords. So buzzwords is like, yeah, come on.
And there was a follow-up. So maybe like big no-nos. Yes, you mentioned some. And follow-up. Is there a common mistake that first-time applicants make?
Don't schedule enough ahead of time, and they write up at the very last minute, and then you don't have time to ask for other people to read your proposal and to incorporate the changes. So you really have to plan it in advance.
Yeah. We're still in a good state because the call opens in mid-January and the deadline is mid-March. So you now have about 6 months. So if you started to think about it, you're still well in time. But yeah, don't leave it until your, for example, Christmas holidays before you start doing this. Then there was a question about the importance of the CV compared to the proposal, and kind of rough rule of thumb.
From the guidelines, it's 50-50 because you have these two blocks and you have to evaluate independently both. So they are two independent, let's say, things. So it's the same. It's the same. I mean, in the end, the problem is that there are so many people that apply so little funding that if you have a little weakness somewhere, the proposal is over. So it has to be excellent in all respect. So if it's good, that's not enough, unfortunately. So you have this. You have basically 5 scores that you can evaluate the proposal from 0 to every let's say sub part of the proposal is evaluated from 0 to 5. And 5 is excellent. So which means before you have good and almost good, but good is not enough. You really need to have some outstanding things for all the point. It's very hard.
Yeah. Although you don't necessarily need to have that from all referees. So if there's 1 or 2 referees that are very much out of line with the rest of the evaluation reports, then
they will be dropped.
Usually drop them.
They will be dropped. So this also can happen if one, or let's say you have 5 referees, and if all they say good things and one say very horrible things, then the panel will say, okay, maybe this person was biased, and they will drop it. So there is a chance, but still you need to have very good evaluation, excellent evaluation from as much as you can.
Okay, then I have one more question. What if there is a running project that the applicant is leading as a PI? Is the overlap with ERC good or bad? And I had actually this situation in my case. So 2 things are very important. One, you can't have funding from 2 places for the same research. So that's completely illegal in most research agencies. So you have to make sure that the overlap is only in terms of the time and not really the topics and the actual work that you're doing. In terms of the time overlap, you have to be able to show that you have a sufficient time commitment to the ERC grant. So if your running project is you are the PI and you have a team that's actually doing the work, and you have, let's say, 10% time commitment as for management, this is fine. I don't think it's necessarily a plus or a minus. Or what do you think, Zeila?
For the topic, I think it's bad if the topic is the same, if there is a total overlap, because it is illegal to get double funding. So you really need to have some idea which is different. And yeah, for the, I think, commitment of the PI, I think around 40% should be reasonable commitment, but it should be true. I mean,
I think 60 is minimum for starting.
60 is minimum, okay.
I think 60, yeah.
But then 40 maybe for the consolidator.
Yeah, it drops for the other stages.
Yeah.
Okay, one question came in. If I have a high impact publication, well, don't think about high impact, or try not to. As a corresponding author, but with my PhD supervisor, should I exclude it from the 5 publications? Personally, I'd say not, because if it's an important publication and you are the corresponding author, that shows that you had an independent contribution or an important contribution. But overall, for these 5 publications, please make sure they are relevant for the grant. No, don't pick your highest impact paper that is completely irrelevant for this grant, because that doesn't look good. Your publication list, the 5 papers, they should support why you are the person to do this grant, and why do you have the skills, the expertise, the background to do this. And so something that's completely irrelevant is maybe not the best idea.
Exactly. That session of the publication, it really has to show why you are the right person to deal with this project, and why only you, because maybe your expertise is unique. And this also, if you were working in different groups, then you learn different techniques, and then you are like the only one with this kind of set of skills. So these are the important things. Yeah.
And I mean, if you have 4 papers that are really relevant for the grant, you don't have more. This can be if you're a young applicant in the beginning part of the eligibility period, and you have one high impact, let's say, prestigious publication that is not directly relevant, but where you're the corresponding author, by all means put it in there. Like, you don't have to leave it blank. But just to think the publication list is meant to support the proposal, the specific proposal that you're making.
Yeah. Also, there is, I don't know, maybe you have heard about the DORA, the declaration. So basically now, what is important is not really the impact of the journal, but your own impact. And so the quality of a paper is not, let's say, decided by the quality of the journal. It's then there you can put your own, I don't know, the number of citations, your own personal impact instead of the impact of the journal. So you can have, I don't know, yeah. So this is much better now.
Yeah. And then there came one more question, follow-up on this dropping of an evaluator with very different review. Does that happen automatically within the panel, or
in the panel?
Yeah.
No, you cannot appeal, I think.
Yeah, you don't see these reviews until the panel has made its decision. So at that point, the panel did not comment. In my case, I had one referee that was very out of line with the rest, and the panel didn't really comment on that directly. Yeah. But it was clear that, otherwise my score probably wouldn't have been strong enough. So it was clear that this person was considered to be an outlier.
Yeah. Yes, that's also my experience. So the candidate will not even see this weird report. It's a panel.
I did see the report, so it wasn't like, it was just very short. It wasn't like rude or in the sense like inappropriate. It was just, not interesting. This research isn't good, blah, blah, blah. So just biased or somehow just, negative about it. So, yeah. But if there is inappropriate comments, I guess those people can actually be dropped completely. Okay. I think we are now reached 1 hour mark. I'll post in the public chat the form that we have created for people who are looking to apply in the next year's call, and we try to pair you up with a mentor from the YAE. Of course, we can't promise that for everybody. It really depends on whether we find volunteers for all of these. And do also keep in mind, we'll send some info about this later on, but do keep in mind you don't have to rush to do this and fill this right away. We'll set a deadline at the end of the year, and we want to really see a prospective title and prospective abstract for your proposal, so we can actually find the mentor that is the best suited for you.
People are asking if people from not EU13 countries can have a mentor. So the goal of this is really to try to help people that maybe do not have in their institution somebody from with a previous experience in big European grants. But if, for instance, you are working at EPFL Lausanne, come on, you can ask your big boss to read your paper. So
and if you're working in Germany or France or the UK, you have national research agencies that have very extensive trainings for ERC. You get to read proposals that are there. So, you know, you can fill the forum, but we really have to put the priority on people who have no network, in whose countries there may have never been an ERC grant successful. So we really want to help those countries. So that's where our focus needs to be.
Yeah. Also in the Netherlands, for instance, at the national level, there are a lot of support, and each university, they have people dedicated to, I don't know, proofread and check that the English is good enough and so on. So that there are more resources. So we try to help for the places where these resources are not available.
Good. I think we are reached our time. We're very glad that you found this helpful, and yeah, we'll send very likely recordings to both the domain panel and the general one, information about the registration for the mentorship program and so on. So we have all of your email addresses through the registration system. So yeah, thank you very much for your active participation.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye-bye.